Hello, my name is Oseyi. I'm glad to be here today. I'm going to talk to you about some of the skills I've learned being a product manager that have helped me become a more effective PM for my team. So a little bit about me before I get started. I work at Square, been there a few years. Now I lead teams of PMs that are responsible for our order management and checkout experiences and integrations across all of our markets and point of sale solutions. So if you've ever paid at a Square merchant, swiped your card, signed on the screen with your finger, that's part of the solutions our team owns, as well as integrations with third-party delivery services. So super passionate about financial inclusion and specifically about using tech to solve problems at scale for populations that technology aren't really typically built for. I've had roles in engineering. I used to be a software engineer, solutions architecture, did a little bit of VC work, which is an interesting story, and proud along of Berkeley Haas and WashU and Truman State. So excited to be here today. So as you think about becoming a product manager, there's so many different definitions. You see product management roles at different companies. They're described different ways. People have different skill sets. There's so many different ways of being a PM. There are books about how to be a better PM. But the one thing I found that's common across all of these different roles and across a PM role is that PMs work on teams. And as a PM, you're responsible for making your team more effective. And so as I talk today, I'm going to come back to that a lot. That the key to being successful as a product manager is figuring out how to get the best out of your team. Because product managers exist in a context. Every role is different because each team is different. No two teams are the same. And so coming into a team and expecting that all the things you've done before are going to work in the new team usually doesn't work out. So it's important to understand the context that you exist in, because product management roles are super local to the team that you're working on, to the group of people that you need to deliver your product. And so there's no such thing as a generic product manager because the jobs are different for different companies, for different teams in different contexts. And because you're working with teams and you're working with people, trust is key to being successful. And so I will talk about ways to, as you become a PM on any team, how to be successful and how to empower your team to deliver results. I'm a big sports fan, and as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, the thing that kept coming back to me was how this seems very similar to sports coaching at the very highest level. So I have Jose Mourinho, who's one of my favorite coaches, which is probably going to be polarizing. That's okay. And coaches are one of the few people that when you take a new job, you're expected to be successful. You didn't pick any of the team members. You just got there. And the expectation is in a short amount of time, what worked for you in the past should work for you again in a new environment. And it requires a combination of skills to be successful as a top level coach. You have to be persuasive, you have to have confidence, sometimes requires coercion, but also requires discipline to achieve success. And coaches don't play. So as much as coaches can go through training sessions, they're not on the field. They can shout instructions from the sidelines, but the team is the one that drives success. And so coaches are really only successful if the team is successful. And finally, as if people follow soccer or football, if the coaches don't do well, there's a long line of people just waiting to take that coach's job. And so it's a very interesting similarity with sports coaching at the highest level. And this helps me wrap my head around how to think about any new PM job you go into. What are some of the keys for being successful? And so the key is being successful on the team that you're on. So success isn't generic success. Success can come from becoming the PM that your team really needs, because teams have different contexts, have different needs, and you're hired for a specific context. So that's what we're going to be talking about a lot. I'm going to keep coming back to this. It's about being the product manager that your team needs you to be for the team to be successful. Because this is a talk for product managers, I'm going to talk some frameworks. So I'm going to use a couple frameworks today to help sort of ground us in talking through what I think is important as a PM whenever you join a new team. So the first one is The First 90 Days. Really cool book. If you haven't read it, you can go get a copy of it, or it's a great book. It works really well as generic advice for taking a new job. A lot of business schools will give this to graduates as they finish. And the key point of the book is basically that the first few months of any role are critical for setting the stage for success later on. And breaking your first few months into sort of a 30, 60, 90-day plan really helps give you structure as you figure out what activities you should be doing, what changes you should be making, and how you should be learning to work to make your team more successful. So that's the first framework. Second one is, Marcus Lemonis in People, Product, Process, which people might be familiar with. And if you're not, he has a show called The Profit where he goes and helps struggling businesses. And the framework allows you to think about any business, any situation. I recently had to do a reorg on my team, and this is actually one of the frameworks we used to figure out what the problems were on the team, what we needed to change, and how we would measure success. And so people, which is always the most important thing, means the people on the team. Are they in the right roles? Are they matched with the right skill sets for what they need to do to make the team successful? Is there conflict on the team? Should you be removing people from the team, adding people from the team? Do you have the right skills overall? Product is really about the business and the product itself. Are you building the right things? Do you have gaps? Do you have upset customers? Is your strategy wrong? Also very important to know as you join a team. And then process is about how you execute. In the manufacturing sense, it's more about efficiency and all of that, but I think for product, it's about execution, product execution. Are you able to marshal the people you have to build the right things in a timely manner? And those things aren't flukes, right? So process is really important as a product manager. And so these two frameworks, and I'll go back a bit, breaking your first few days into these three buckets, and it could be longer. I will say like the 30, 60, 90, depends on the context you're in. But for most contexts, that's the right breakup. But it could be longer if you need to. But having these three milestones for yourself and using the people, product, process framework to figure out how to help your team can really help you put some structure around figuring out what you need to do on your team. So those are two frameworks we'll use, and we'll come back to them. All right, so let's work on an example 30, 60, 90 plan for a team. So let's say I'm a new team, I'm a new product manager, just hired in, gone for the interviews, congratulations, you joined the team. Let's say you met with some of the team members before you started, but you're now on the job, you're expected to perform. What do you do when you get in? All right, so the first thing I tell people to do when they start a first job in the first 30 days is to listen and learn. You're new, there's a context that existed before you got there. Unless you're the first PM at a startup, which even in that case, someone was doing the PM work before, there was someone doing the work before you got there. And so it's really important to understand where they succeeded, where they failed, and to learn from their mistakes and their successes. You should be talking to engineers and designers and other stakeholders, especially if you're in a platform job, about how you could make their lives better. And this is really important from the people point of view, because as a new person coming in, your goal should be to build trust and to demonstrate that you are there to help the team be more successful. People already know you're smart, so this is not the time to show that you're smart. You got the job. I assume you were the right person for the job is why you were hired, so this is not the time to prove that yet. This is the time to listen and to learn. And like I said earlier, to start to understand the context that your team exists in. To understand where there are relationships that need to be fixed, to understand what, as we would say at Square, what the elephants in the room are for the team. So that's on the people side, listening and learning. On the product side, it's important in this time to start to audit the product, to get a sense of where the gaps are, who your top customers are, what issues need to be solved, what things have been stuck in the backlog for months, and where the product is stuck. I found that a really cool way and a really shortcut basically to doing this is shadowing the customer success, customer support teams, or a QA team if you have one. They are basically on the front lines of your product, and so they see all of the cracks. I joke the QA team, a good QA team is like water and sidewalk. They find all the cracks, and so they're great to learn about the product from a very intimate way. They feel the pain that the customers feel because they're taking the calls in the case of customer success, and they'll be very good at telling you what the top issues are that affect the product, especially ones that haven't been solved in a while. And then on the process side, there will be existing team meetings, sprint planning meetings, stand-ups, team meetings with stakeholders, especially if you have a platform, because you need other people to build things at most companies at scale. So this is a time to understand like how people have been working. It's a time to ask a lot of questions to understand why things are the way they are. It's fine to want to change things. It's fine to ask sort of open-ended, sort of probing questions. This is not the time to criticize yet. It's the time to just, like I said, listen and learn. And then a key output of this is to write all this down. So at Square, and some of you know this already, and we got this from Amazon because we have several people who came from there, we have a written document culture. So the norm is typically to put all of these findings in a document of some kind. And there's several different opportunities to do this. It's at a place like Square. There's like a monthly operational review or a quarterly business review. We have like a weekly sort of product review where we share product updates. Whatever the format is, write it down. Write down what you found and share it. So if a document is the way a company communicates, do that. If an email works, if it's a slide deck, write it down, but be kind. Focus on facts and be honest about what you found. You'll find that this is a tremendous gift for people on your team. They've been in the trenches long enough, and they'll really appreciate someone coming with fresh eyes, which is a rare opportunity to see what they don't see. So that's the first 30 days. And so by the end of the first 30 days, you should have a pretty clear view of the context the team operates in. You should have some sense of the context around the team, where the gaps are, what relationships need to be mended, who your allies are on the team. And so that should be your goal for the first 30 days. So let's say you've done this, you're successful, you move into the next 30 days. So this is the next 30 days. So by the next 30 days, you've gotten some feedback from conversations from the people you've talked to. They've complained about working styles or not getting updates or about not getting the attention on a specific ticket that they care about. Right? Now's the time to start taking action. So the next the 60-day mark, you should have taken action on some of the feedback that you've gotten. Find small quick wins that you can change based on the feedback you've gotten from people. If you're a people manager and after 30 days you've observed your team, now's the time to start doing performance conversations. Don't wait. Start taking some actions that are within your control at this point. On the product side, it's now time to find things to ship. So I talk about this, in a different talk I've given, but the goal of a product manager is to ship product. And so if by the end of your 60 days you haven't found things to ship, it means you're already behind. So it's important to find things to ship, no matter how small. A good place to find these kinds of changes are from the customer success and QA teams, because they have bugs that can be fixed. Engineering probably has bugs that can be fixed. So find small things to ship, either projects that are already in flight that just need to get over the finish line, or small enhancements to ship. And the goal here is to build that muscle of shipping product, which is really important. Shipping, just like playing on a team and winning, is a habit. And so starting to get the habit of shipping is super important. And that will have an impact on the people around you. Because I found the best engineers and designers want to work with PMs who can get their products out the door. And then finally on the process side, it's time to start making some changes in execution. So you'll find gaps in the way the team does sprint planning, team meetings, works with stakeholders. Everything should literally be on the table for change. However, it doesn't mean you should change everything at once. And this is really key for building trust that you make these changes with your engineering team. Now is not the time to go in and change everything because you're a new PM and PMs are good at execution and meetings. Work with engineering, get their buy-in. You will get pushback, and that's okay. So find things that you're able to push through on your own, working with engineering, that will improve the execution of the team. Again, all of this in the 30 to 60 days is about demonstrating your ability to manage the ship, right? You're showing that you can successfully, what I call, control the system by making process changes, shaping features, and having an impact on the people around you. This is about becoming the coach of the team by making changes. So it's demonstrating trust and competence by action. So next 30 days is about taking action. Now, one thing to call out in this time period, which could be fraught with danger, is your team is a system, right? And so like most systems, if you change it too fast, or especially in the case of performance management, too slow, things will get worse. And so there's a sweet spot that you need to find. And this is why if you had done your homework well enough in the first 30 days, you would understand the context. And just like all product features, you'll figure out the things that need to be changed to have the most impact without completely unraveling the system. And then for the last 30 days, and I say last 30 days, it doesn't mean you should stop doing these things. Again, the framework is just there to give you some structure. I think beyond the last 30 days, these are things that are fine to continue to do. But I think this is the time where it's time to start consolidating on the gains that you've made and to start empowering others. And I'll talk a little bit in a bit why empowering others is super important. On the people side, this is where you start making changes on who's working on what. Or if you're a people manager, start making sure you have the right people on the team, you have the right skills, changing assignments of what PMs work on what, because like you want the team to start operating the way you want post the 90 days. So that's these are some things to do on the people side. In the past, I've changed assignments of product managers. I've changed who was in charge of what, changed charters of teams at this point, because you really do want the team to start to execute in the way you like to work. And then the product side, now that you've shown that you can ship small features, that you can marshal the system to operate the way you want, it's now really important to start proposing larger, more strategic and impactful changes. Now, this is another area where it's very important to be balanced, because while it's important to have a big vision and to go do research and understand the product better and really try to push the product forward, which is super important, it's also important to do it realistically. So I've seen PMs struggle who have come into a new team, want to build this new fancy thing, and everyone's like, that's going to take 2 years. And they're oblivious to that because they just want to power through. I think that will make you lose trust. So it's really important to be realistic, to set milestones, to phase out your vision. I like to call it thinking big and executing small, which is have a big idea, have a grand plan for what you need to do, and then figure out a way to make it small and manageable and actionable for the team, so that this big vision isn't daunting for you. At Square, for example, we use, like I said before, use documents. A way to do this would be to write a document about your vision, share it with some stakeholders, get a bunch of input and feedback, create what your MVP is going to be, start working on that MVP potentially, and that's sort of how you would move. And I think PMs, especially more senior PMs at a place like Square, that's the difference between the more junior PMs and the more established PMs, is they have what we call conviction about things they want to do. Conviction doesn't mean you go it all alone. It just means you have a strong vision and you're able to execute. So thinking big, executing small. And then on the process side, Your focus at this point should be sustainability and scaling yourself. Because what happens when you start a new role, especially as a PM, is that you do all heavy lifting on your own. The process changes that you did in the first 60 days, there's probably pushback, as you'll always get if you're changing things. So you probably like dug in and leaned in to be, the human engine behind many of these processes. That's not sustainable. You cannot operate at that mode for long term. You will burn out, and it's not effective. So this is the time to start figuring out how you adjust the processes you've put in place so that they scale. And this means making additional changes, identifying others on the team who can run some of these processes. The test I like to tell people to use is if you take a week off from work, will these processes still run? If you take 2 weeks off from work, will they run? Some of the best processes I put in place are ones where we started doing something, I left the team, and they kept doing it because people had bought in. It was actually so valuable for the team to keep doing. So that's what you want. You want processes that are self-sustaining and that will run without you, because the time you get back allows you to do other things, which is a key part of starting to grow as a PM, is to start to show that you can take on more scope. Being bogged down and busy all the time will not help you grow. And so at this point, you should start sending signals that you can do more because you're able to be efficient and organize the team. And so, which is why empowering others is important, because empowering others allows you to grow and it starts to demonstrate that you can be a leader beyond the scope that you were hired for in the previous 90 days. And so if you do this, you should be at this point comfortably sharing your vision for the future, demonstrating and showing how you plan to lead and empower the team to succeed. And so back to the coaching analogy again, is by this point, like the team has adapted to how you want them to play, right? And so teams have talented individuals, and the team generally reflects the talents of the individuals on the team, but the team is successful and rises and falls based on how well they've adapted to the playbook that you've put in place. So by 90 days, they should have at least understood your playbook, and those that don't adapt you should know who they are, and you should be coaching or working through that. But that's sort of how you know you're successful by the 90 days, is if the team has started adapting to your playbook. And so my closing thoughts for everyone are 5 things, key takeaways to remember. I know I went through a bunch of information, but I wanted to make sure if you didn't take away anything from any of this, the 5 things I want you to remember. First of all, remember PMs exist in a context, and the key to success is understanding that context and being able to use that context to your advantage to help guide the team. The second one, which is the principle we have at Square as well, we call it show not tell, which is a play on show and tell, is don't just observe and describe the context. I did say write it down and share it, but don't be a passenger in your team. Take action and shape the context. The great thing about understanding the context is figuring out how to change the context, to shape it to help yourself be successful. And then another play on always be selling is always be shipping. Because the best teams, the best engineers, the best technical folks you'll work with, they want to work with PMs who can help them get their innovation and their product out the door. And you will always get high performing teams if you are seen to be someone who can figure out how to work the machine and the system that is your team to ship product. The fourth thing, I already mentioned this before, is to think big but execute small. Always have a bold vision for the future, but also have a very clear path to how to incrementally get there. Everyone can have big ideas, but not everyone can execute. And as a PM, you rise or fall with how well you can execute. And then the last thing, which I'm really passionate about, is as you use these techniques, and as you start to get the team to be more successful and to be more efficient, it's important that you empower others to also take on some more responsibility and to start to also follow these processes in their own journey, because that's the key to growing and scaling yourself as a PM. You will not grow, you will not scale yourself beyond just the core features that you own until you can show that you can handle more scope. And empowering others is the way to scale yourself so you can do more. Another way to do that is also to get better at prioritization, which I didn't talk about today, but that's also something I'm pretty passionate about, is like, how do you prioritize once you have all the scope? But that's probably something for another day. And so thank you so much. This has been great, and hope you enjoyed that. Bye.